Hey everyone, welcome back to the live Support Ops Hangout. I'm your host, Chase Clemens. For those of you that don't know, this is a show all about the customer. So we talk about supporting the customer, customer service, the customer experience, basically all those things that go in and around the customer. That's what we're talking about. New topic each and every week with our panels, so you get to hear what we think about whatever that week's topic is. It's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. This week, Chase Livingston's out. Jeff is out. I promise we're all going to be back maybe next week, maybe the week after, something like that. But for this show, you've got me and Carolyn, which is going to be great. And Carolyn, just to show you how great remote working is, she plans for this extended stay in Sydney, and then all of a sudden just is like, hey, I'm not going to go back home. So where are you this time?
I'm currently in Waikiki in Honolulu, Hawaii. And just to encourage all remote workers and anybody who might be thinking of applying at Buffer, this is my view at the moment.
I love that. It's the come work at Buffer because this can be you.
Yep.
Oh, all right. So and seriously, I would second that. If you haven't ever, well, I mean, working for Buffer obviously is a fantastic thing. But if you haven't been to Hawaii, it's absolutely fantastic. My wife and I went to Maui a couple of years ago, and it was just, the weather's perfect. It's one of those, like, I don't know if you noticed it when you came through the airport, but like the airport at the baggage carousel doesn't have like real walls. It's an open space because the weather's always perfect. So like, what's the point of having air conditioning at that point?
Yeah. Yeah.
So definitely visit. Any island's going to be great compared to the snow and rain that you probably have experienced up to this point in the States, anyways. Okay, this show. So this week we're talking about how in-person customer service relates to the online version that we all do for our apps. Erin sent me an email. I want to say a couple of weeks ago. It might have been a couple of months. I tried to get it scheduled as quick as I could. But she sent me an email basically saying that she works in a restaurant now and thinks a lot about how the same principles can apply from the restaurant, but in the restaurant as well as in the online sphere, but sometimes need to be executed differently. And I completely agree with her. I used to have I still do. I've got a restaurant background. Was managing restaurants for several years right out of college. There's a lot of crossover between doing something like that, interacting with people, and then moving that into the online world with our SaaS products and stuff. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And Carolyn, when we were doing the show prep for this one, the big thing was I wanted each of us to think about this just really fantastic experience we had in a real-world location, like a restaurant, a hotel. I think you mentioned car rental or something like that. So what was that last experience you had in a real-world setting like that really just stood out and made you really think, this is how customer service, the customer experience is meant to be done?
Yeah, so I loved the timing of this one, as I mentioned, because in the prep, because a couple of coworkers and I are here, and super last minute we decided to rent a car on Saturday, and so we booked it and went to go pick it up, and it was through Enterprise, and this poor manager who was working on Saturday morning, supposed to be out of there at noon, excuse me, ended up having a whole flood of people who had the same idea and all booked a bunch of cars right at the last second, and he didn't have any cars on the lot.
Oh.
So he was trying to sort of manage our expectations, prepare us for being bused to a different location while still answering the phone. And so I had called earlier to ask a couple questions, and I would never have known that I wasn't the only person in the room when I was on the phone with him. And so when we arrived at the pickup, he was doing these calls, and one of them in particular was so tough. It was this person who, I don't know if had never really rented a car before or ever even been in a car or seen a car. He was sort of explaining, he was trying to explain to him how to turn on the car, and so he was, you think you start at the beginning, which is put the key in, but then you realize oh, I have to back up further from that. So you have to click the button that extends the key, and then you have to find the steering wheel and look. He was explaining it, and never a moment of impatience in his voice. And he's going, yeah, turn it. Yeah, clockwise. Like this person had just, I don't know. It's a little scary to think that that person was on the road, but anyway, the most amazing thing I think out of all of it was at the end when he hung up. Instead of going like, "Oh man, can you believe that call?" or something to the guy who was at the desk, he said, like, "I'm so sorry, sir," yeah, and like never blinked or indicated that he had been frustrated in any way by the call, and it was just super inspiring for us, and just to watch it, it was really cool to see.
And that's the day that you decided not to rent a car, just so you wouldn't be on the road with the other person.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was amazed at his patience. I probably would have said like, maybe you shouldn't be in a car. Like, I don't know. It was incredible to watch, and then how he like didn't say a word about or act frustrated in any way. So yeah,
Yeah,
we did rent a car, but we didn't see that person on the road at least, hopefully.
I know I overheard. I flew into Atlanta one time and got to rent a car. Was out getting gas and everything for it, and I overheard a conversation from the person at the pump next to me, and it must have been a similar situation because they were on the phone with obviously their rental company, and they were walking them through how to put gas in the car. And it was breaking down each step. Open the gas tank, turn the lid counterclockwise to open it, put your credit card. Oh, you don't have a credit card, so you've got to go prepay and make sure you know what pump you're on. And it was just one of those, like, the things that we take for granted. Getting in a car, putting gas in a car, having to break those steps down is absolutely crazy when you think about it. And we do something similar with apps, right? So somebody says, I can't figure out how to like schedule a tweet and buffer. We have to, it's not. We might think it's simple and easy and obvious, but it's not to everybody. And sometimes you have to break it down in steps like that.
Yep.
So so shout out first off to Enterprise for whoever was working that desk that morning.
Andy,
obviously,
hey, his name.
There you go. Because obviously Andy listens to our show, so pre-shout out to him for that one. Have you ever been in a similar situation like with Buffer there? Was there ever a time where you've got just case after case coming in and it was a really slim crew, one or two people? Like how do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. I think sometimes I think the most interesting ones are at every level of customer service, you try and relate to the person. And everybody's been brand new to something, right? So you can remember what that feels like, and you can sort of put yourself in the shoes of the person. I think it's especially hard when I can't relate to the person. So like the one that's super challenging for me that I always sort of strive to empathize with but can't is we have a few visually impaired customers who have screen readers, and for them, like, you just can't say like
go click on the green button.
Right, exactly, right, because they have to. Sometimes the screen reader has to like just read every button aloud, and everything takes a long time. And I can say like, "What's the error message that you got?" And they say like, "I don't know, it popped down for 10 seconds, but I didn't have time to read it because I had to increase the font on my screen." Or like, there's just these things that like we take for granted the like general confidence with web applications, which makes us already one step removed from some customers. But I think that is the trickiest one. And I've seen one of my coworkers, Elsa, just be a rock star in that moment. I've seen her have a conversation with some people who have struggled to just even like see the login window. Like, how do I even where do I even put in my email address? Like, starting from the very, very, very beginning. So yeah, I think I don't really have any advice, but I just think those are the most challenging and the most interesting and the most maybe exciting because you really learn to stretch yourself as a customer service representative when you're when you just really can't relate and have to sort of draw on any other time you've been either frustrated or handicapped or ran into something or something like that.
Yeah, for me personally, that kind of feeling shows up whenever, back in the day when I was asked to do like articles in our knowledge base, in our help articles, right? So you have to walk through and document how to do something that seems so simple. And first off, another pre-shout out to Ann and Joan on our team because they do a fantastic job of breaking down any new feature or any part of Basecamp and that kind of thing into a really helpful help doc. And that's just not a skill I have because I just can't put myself in those shoes. Case in point, I was talking to somebody that had called in and said they were having problems logging in, and my first thought was, all right, well, what kind of error message are you seeing? Because that's probably what's going on. And they came back with, well, I don't even know where to log in. Like, where on the web do I go to log in? And that's the kind of mindset you have to put yourself in when you're, breaking down a new feature or something for your help docs. It sounds so simple that you know where to log in at, but there are going to be people that don't know that. So you've got to have that listed in your help doc somewhere just to get them started and kind of funnel them in the right direction. So for anybody that does do the help docs for their site and things like that, props to y'all because I don't get it. It just sometimes it's just beyond me. So we talked about enterprise. Is there any other companies you've used recently that like really stick out as far as really nailing that physical in-person, and I say in-person, but that could mean like on the phone or that kind of thing too. Anything beyond like our email kind of interaction. Is there any other company that really stands out?
Yeah, I had a thought of another example from the UPS store in San Francisco. So I recently moved, or not that recently anymore, but I needed to just buy a few boxes, and so I went to the UPS store without knowing any better, and I said, how much does it cost to buy a box? I need like 3 boxes or something.
Yeah.
And the UPS store sells boxes for $22 a box, and I was a little bit outraged by that price.
Yeah. For those of you that aren't watching like the video version, both of our faces are like, what?
Yeah, I was like, wait, for like a cardboard box? And I said, oh gosh, like, eek, I'm moving like down the street. Like, they're not going to suffer a lot of abuse. Like, I really don't need that serious of a box. I'll just like get it.
I'm not putting my Apple gold-plated watch in this box. It'll be fine.
Exactly. So I kind of said, like, is there anywhere else that I can buy boxes? And this sweet, precious girl working at the counter kind of like flicked her eyes over to her manager who was in the same room and was like, oh no, sorry, I can't think of anywhere. And I was like, oh, you guys can't make recommendations, right, for like competitors? And she was like, yeah. And her manager was like watching over, and so she she rang me up for the mail that I was sending, and like chased me out of the store and was like, oh, I forgot to give you your receipt. And was like, there's a store 2 blocks up. And so she like went out of her way to give me the better experience, even though she was losing the business. And I just absolutely adore that. And I'm totally going to go back and try and hire her. I've actually thought of chasing her down and being like, are you happy here?
Hey, do you want to like remote work from Hawaii with us?
Right, exactly, and like maybe be able to make the best decision for the customer without feeling like your manager is going to yell at you. But yeah, the fact that she like sort of went out of her way to sort of break the rules to do the right thing by the customer, I thought was really impressive and very admirable.
Yeah, and side note for anybody that has to move, because I was in the same situation 8 months, something like that. Last June, whenever that was, we bought a new house and moved. Best place to get cardboard boxes? Your local grocery store, because they'll have stacks of them outside. Don't go to Walmart. Walmart like sends all their boxes back and reuses them that way. But like your other grocery stores, if you're in Tennessee, the famous Piggly Wiggly, that's where we went. Dollar Tree, Dollar General, those kind of things, because they're recycling those anyways. Boxes are there. Oh, recycling center. Boxes are there. I mean, that's easy ways. Don't spend $22 for a box. That's crazy.
No.
All right. So one good question here from Andrew Spittle over at Automatic. If you don't know Andrew, you need to know Andrew, or at least like follow him on Twitter and that kind of thing, because he's full of really great. A really great look at doing support on the scale that Automatic does. We get a a lot of that info from Chase Livingston when he's on the show, but Spittle really rounds out, your big company tech support done right kind of thing. Anyway, he pinged me earlier, and when I told him we were talking about this, and he said, one of the things I'm always curious about is how web companies approach instances where the digital and the in-person intersect. So how do you translate the way that you are and the way that you interact with customers online into circumstances where it's a face-to-face meeting? Think like trade shows, workshops. In our case, maybe like UserConf if you're supporting other people that are using customer support products, that kind of thing. So does Buffer do any conferences like that? Do y'all show up with like a booth or anything?
No, not at the moment. Although we do have usually a meetup at every retreat, but that's not really like support. That's more just get to know you. But we do occasionally. I mean, if we happen to be in the same city as somebody who really, really begs and needs in-person support, and we have time.
Yeah, I mean, I know when y'all do your meetups and things like that, you'll go out and do like buy everybody around or something at a bar, that kind of thing. So how do you, or maybe it's not even like something you're thinking about when y'all actually do it, but how do you, like, when you're in a physical setting like that with people that use Buffer and things, so maybe not necessarily support-related questions, but how do you still get the Buffer brand across when somebody comes up and just says, hey, I love Buffer, I noticed you're wearing a Buffer shirt? Or is there anything intentional behind that, or is it just like, oh, be yourself, it's going to be great? Because Buffer is the land of unicorns and things like that.
I mean, I'm always a proponent of be yourself. I think that in-person support is even harder, right? So when somebody comes up to you and they're like, oh, I love Buffer, it's just so annoying that I can't schedule the same tweet to go out every week. Like, could you fix that? And like you.
Yeah, right now. Give me 60 seconds.
I know, right? It's like you know how to do that digitally because you can sort of act like it's the first time you've heard the idea, and like or at least, or not, or maybe not say like, oh yeah, we've heard that one before, like whichever is more appropriate for the situation. But you kind of have to like do it with your face and your body language too, not just with your words, with your fingers.
There's no emoticons or emoji or exclamation points or anything. So
right, yeah. So I think it's harder, but it's also it's harder in that way, but it's also easier because you get to connect with that person in a way that you can't digitally. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's easier to have a lot more of an honest conversation in person. So you can just, like, you can sort of talk off the record a little bit. Like, you can be like, oh man, I know that experience really sucks, which like you might not have written. So I think it's more fun in that way because you get to just like get really personal and get to know the person. But yeah, I don't really know about any specific advice other than just be yourself.
Yeah, I know for us, we did do some in-person support kind of workshops. They were called Basecamp Delivered. I'll make sure to put a link to them because I think we've got like video and write-ups and things like that. I'll put that in the show notes. And for us, it was fun. You get to meet customers in the city where they're at. You get to hear how they're using Basecamp. You get to have these one-on-one conversations. For us, each session that we had with a customer was one-on-one, and it was 30 minutes long. So we only got to talk to maybe 30 people that day, but those people were big users of Basecamp. They were enthusiastic. So like it was always great to have that energy fed back and bring it back into the office, just because sometimes you forget, like, people really do love your product, and seeing it in person is always fun. And yeah, I think the feature request thing, that was the one that we ran into a lot, and it was kind of, you don't want to fall into just like this rote phrase that you're mimicking each time you hear a new idea or anything like that. For us, it was a lot of, for me personally, when somebody says, hey, I want repeating to-dos on the calendar because that's how my business runs, and I'm tired of putting the same to-do in like 50 times a week. It's one of those, like, you've got to sympathize and empathize and all that. But you can also be really honest too and be like, hey, we're a small team. Here's the things that we're kind of working on right now that we're thinking through. We thought about doing that feature, that tool, but it just didn't make it up to the top of the list, and here's why. And I think a lot of times, as long as you're honest with somebody and you set those expectations, it's really good. And if you're doing kind of like workshops like that, or going to conferences and have a booth and all that, don't take just your support team. I definitely recommend taking along programmers and designers too, because we had a programmer that went with us to Atlanta. I think it was Atlanta, and he come back and really got to feel some of the pain that people had using Basecamp in certain areas, and that kind of just it helps spur. Maybe that feature was at the bottom of the list. Now it's kind of getting bumped up a little bit higher to be worked on. But yeah, I definitely, if you're doing those kind of in-person things, I think that they're really beneficial. Just be forewarned, it takes a lot of money to do that. I mean, you're flying people into a city that you're not already in. You're paying for hotel. You're paying, usually co-working spaces and that kind of thing. So a lot of money goes into it, but I think you get a lot out of it too. So that's kind of the experience I had with it. Like I said, I'll put that in the show notes and all that kind of fun stuff. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about before we wrap up the show, because I know, like you said, you're in Hawaii and it's lunch for you, and I know you want to go spend the rest of the day on the beach.
Oh no, I'm working.
Oh, come on, you can take your laptop down to the beach. It'll be fine. Put it in a Ziploc bag. It'll work.
That's a good idea.
Take your iPad, put it in a Ziploc bag. There you go. The other big thing was I wanted to look at how really solid online customer experiences affect your in-person stuff too. And I don't think either you or I have a lot of first-hand experience with our teams. But what I'm thinking in this case is instances where, like a good one, so my bank, USAA. Their online interactions are so freaking solid. I mean, they handle all the mundane stuff so well that whenever I use their app, I think I've talked to their reps maybe twice in the last year, maybe 3 times. But the times when I did need to talk to one of their reps are when it's complicated questions. Something didn't post right to my account. The mortgage process. You want that to be a kind of a person on the phone kind of experience. Being able to kind of take those mundane interactions, throw them off into the app where people can do it there, freed up their reps to do really great, really in-depth interactions with customers when it comes to kind of those more advanced questions that people have. So I think, if you're able to do that, if you're able to take your app and kind of automate those kind of mundane instances, just does it really well. Automate where you can, and intensely automate where you can. I forget the exact phrase now.
Automate where you can, be intensely human where you can't.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that kind of sums it up. When you've got a bank or something, that can do those kind of mundane things through the app, do them there. Don't tie up, a teller at a bank to tell you how much money you have in your account. That kind of seems like a no-brainer. But have you run into other situations, experiences where you've noticed that, where they've really invested into those kind of mundane things to free up their reps for more advanced transactions?
Yeah, I can think of one that I often go to for inspiration. So we use an app called Spark Central for tracking our mentions and search results on Twitter. And so I've talked about this in the past, but because buffer is a word that sometimes gets used on Twitter, both because service like YouTube buffers and also tweets about going to the gym, our search has to be sort of it's sort of elaborate to search for the word buffer plus other terms, but not other terms. And anyway, so I'm just thinking of this. So I've had a total of one 30-minute phone conversation with the customer success person at Spark Central, who at the time was Sarah. And what we did in those
Sarah? Like for meeting people, Sarah?
Yeah.
Also, pre-shout out. Sarah's fantastic. If you
Yeah.
are looking for a Twitter kind of thing, Spark Central, she's fantastic. Does great work over there. Sorry, I heard her and I was
No,
like, wait a minute.
definitely agree. Yeah, talk to me if you if you want somebody to wax poetic about Spark Central. But yeah, and Krista, who now works on our account, is also great. So anyway, I've had like one phone conversation with them, and we went through every single field in the search thing, and it is a complicated thing because sometimes it matters if you have quotes around it or a comma or whatever. But on anytime anything's going on with their service, they put a banner right in the app, and so I always think that's so great because I barely even have a chance to think something going on, which as a service that's based on other services, we have a similar situation, like something's up with the Twitter API or Facebook or anything like that, then oftentimes you need to let people know about stuff even if it's not something you can fix. And so I usually have this like moment of like, I wonder if something's up, and then the banner's there. So I think they do an amazing job with that because I never have to reach out to them and tie up their person who's monitoring Twitter or whatever to tell me, yes, something's going on. Like they don't have to send that tweet 82 times because they've already put a banner in their site, which I think is amazing. It's not exactly the same as the example you're talking about, but I think it might be sort of related.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That's one of those things. Help Scout just started doing this, where we noticed it last weekend. Help Scout was having some problems, and just about the time you go to like send off a tweet to them, just because their Twitter is fantastic, they had a little message somehow in the bottom right corner, and that said, we know there's some troubles going on. Here's a link to the status page where we're going to post all the details and things like that. It was, you put up something little like that, and now anybody that goes, I wonder if something's going on, already knows, so they don't have to ask. It's kind of like the account balance in your bank. You don't have to go tie up a teller just to find out how much money you have. Those kind of examples are like absolutely perfect. I would say be careful on going too far. And kind of the example I've seen of that recently was, I think it was Chili's or maybe Applebee's, where you order with an iPad now at your table, which is great. It makes sure that your order is probably going to be correct, as opposed to like somebody taking your order and then running it back to the kitchen on a ticket and that kind of thing. But you kind of lose a little bit of interaction there. It kind of becomes a more mundane transaction rather than a dining experience that you would want to have if you're going out. Some people like it. Some people don't want to be bothered. They come in, they want to eat real quick, and that just makes one less step where they don't have to interact with a waiter, which is good. But for me, like if I'm going out, especially if I'm going to spend some money for dinner, then I want somebody at my table. I don't want to push an iPad to order.
Yeah, I agree with that. You can definitely take it too far, where you feel like you can almost make it feel like they don't want to hear from you if something is up.
Yeah, same way with like surveys. Everybody does surveys. If you make those too automated filling, then people just are going to be like, oh, they don't really care. They're not really listening to this at all. So just kind of keep that in mind. Let us know. Go over to supportops.co, click on the contact button. Let us know how some of your real-world experiences. It's such like, and I've been using the term real-world. Like I mean, like physical, like interactions, like at the bank or at a car rental place. It's so hard to like separate out that from the online support that we do and things, because it bleeds over so much. But let us know what kind of experiences you've had, what lessons you've pulled from those, and we'll make sure to share them with the rest of the listeners here. supportops.co/contact. That's where you can. Let us know. So that brings us to my favorite part as I'm clicking around looking for that. Oh, it's this week's shout-outs. These are the things that are making us happy. So happy we want to shout them out from the rooftops and let you know that you should be doing, buying, using whatever this thing. You've heard lots of pre-shout-outs through the show, so definitely check out all those. We'll have them in the show notes. But for the official one, what's your pick this week?
Yeah, so I was going to give another shout out to Andy Pang at Waikiki Enterprise. But I was also going to mention, just being sort of a digital nomad at the moment, you get a chance to use all of these apps that you're always hearing about. Airbnb is fantastic. All these different ones that you you use for last-minute planning, which never would have been possible in the past. And one that I never had a chance to use before was Hotel Tonight. And even though I didn't actually end up looking through Hotel Tonight, it let us know about some hotels that we hadn't otherwise seen on Expedia and ended up getting a cool deal. So that's a cool one to try if you're sort of not very planned in advance when you make an impromptu travel decision.
Yeah, the next time you're in one part of the world and just like, oh yeah, I overfly that little island to get home, so let's just stop. It'll be fine.
Exactly.
My shout out this week goes to, it's really weird and really random and not connected at all, which I think a lot of my shout outs are like all the rest of, you, Jeff, and Chase Livingston all have like really tightly integrated, like these are good things for shout outs, and I end up with like, oh, I went to watch this movie. You should see this movie.
I like those too. I like your shout outs.
But for me, I've been kind of planning out some of the different crops and plants and things that I'm putting out this year on our new little homestead here. And one of the things that I've been using a lot is a company called Johnny's Selected Seeds. So it doesn't matter if you're planting a lot or if you just want some seeds to do like a little basil thing, like on your San Francisco ledge, that kind of thing. Definitely, I highly recommend them just because they not only sell things, but they give you a really great experience around them. They tell you all the details you need to know about the different seeds and plants and things that you're looking at, best planting practices. It's probably one of the only sites out there where I've seen like customer reviews on plants, which sounds really dumb. It's like, oh, it's a plant, you're going to eat it, that's fine. But like the reviews give you a chance to see how it actually plays out. When somebody goes out and plants it. So I thought that was really cool. So johnnyseeds.com, definitely check them out if you're planning anything. I don't know how many people are actually going to like use that shout out. But there it is. Go and do what you want with it.
Cool.
All right. So that wraps everything up. We're going to have all the show notes up, supportops.co, where you can click on all the different links that we talked about to the products and things like that. We're going to be back next week, 5:30 p.m. Central Time, Monday, to tackle another great topic. I think everybody's going to be back. Don't quote me on that, but I know I'll be here, and whoever else shows up will be too. So until we see you then, have an awesome week.